She had always been drawn to the piano, even as a small child. While other kids ran outside to play, she would sit for hours, letting her fingers drift across the keys. The music made her feel alive, and though she had no formal lessons, she learned by listening to recordings and trying to mimic the sounds she heard. Every wrong note was a lesson, every melody a small victory. Her family was supportive but cautious, reminding her that talent alone might not be enough in the competitive world of music. Still, she held on to her dream. Life was not easy. She worked long hours in a small cafe that catered to both locals and occasional tourists. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and gave her a quiet place to think about music. The cafe had an old upright piano in the corner. It wasn't fancy, and the keys were a little worn, but to her it was a treasure. She spent her breaks playing simple tunes, experimenting with chords and melodies she had invented in her head. Sometimes, regular customers would stop and listen, offering small compliments, but she never played for recognition. Music was her escape, her comfort, and the one place where she could be herself. One evening, the cafe buzzed with an unusual energy. A famous pianist, known for both talent and a sharp tongue, had decided to visit. Word spread quickly, and regular customers whispered excitedly about the opportunity to see someone renowned in person. She felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She knew she had the chance to perform for someone who could judge her abilities, someone whose opinion might open doors she hadn't dared imagine. Yet she also feared failure. What if he laughed at her? What if all the practice, all the hours she spent alone at the piano, weren't enough? As she polished tables and served drinks, she tried to keep her composure. The pianist arrived with a small entourage, confident and almost intimidating. He spoke in a calm but firm voice, commanding attention without effort. She noticed how people around him leaned in, eager to hear a single word. She felt a pang of nervousness but also a spark of determination. This was her moment, and she decided she would not let fear hold her back. When there was a pause in the cafe, she approached the piano quietly, her heart pounding. The pianist looked up, his eyes scanning her briefly before returning to his companions with a smirk. She could feel the doubt in his glance, a silent challenge thrown her way. Her fingers hovered above the keys, trembling slightly, but she took a deep breath. She would play not to prove him wrong, but to show herself that she belonged in this moment. She began with a simple melody, allowing the music to flow naturally. The notes were soft at first, almost hesitant, but gradually they gained strength. The cafe seemed to fade away as she lost herself in the music. Each chord carried emotion. Each rhythm reflected the countless hours she had spent practicing in silence. Customers paused their conversations, leaning closer, captivated by the unexpected beauty of the sound. Even the pianist turned his head fully toward her, an eyebrow raised in surprise. He had not expected skill, not from someone so unknown, not from someone so ordinary in appearance. Yet, he could not deny the talent unfolding before him. As she continued, memories of past doubts surfaced. There had been days when she questioned whether she should continue, when the fear of failure felt overwhelming. She remembered the nights she stayed awake, practicing while others slept, imagining a future where she could play freely without fear of judgment. She thought of the small victories, the first time she had played a piece correctly from beginning to end, the first time someone had genuinely complimented her playing. All those moments had led to this instant, and now, she felt the power of every effort she had ever made. The melody shifted into a more complex section, one that required both technical skill and emotional depth. She closed her eyes, trusting her hands to move as if they had minds of their own. The audience felt the change, sensing the intensity of her performance. There was a silence that spoke louder than applause, a collective recognition that something remarkable was happening. Even the famous pianist's expression softened, his smirk replaced by a look of genuine interest. He could sense the raw talent and passion that could not be taught, something unique that came from within. She finished the piece with a gentle but firm flourish, letting the last note linger in the air. The cafe remained silent for a moment, as if everyone was holding their breath, reluctant to break the magic. Then, a Applause erupted, warm and enthusiastic. Some people whistled, others clapped loudly, and a few even stood up. Her heart raced, not from nervousness, but from exhilaration. She had done it. She had shared a piece of herself, and it had resonated with others. The pianist approached her, his steps measured, his expression unreadable at first. She felt a mix of pride and apprehension. Would he acknowledge her talent, or dismiss it as a fluke? When he spoke, his words were calm but sincere. He asked how long she had been playing, how she had learned, and if she had considered formal training. She answered honestly, explaining her journey of self-teaching, her long hours at the piano, and her love for music above all else. He listened carefully, nodding occasionally, a hint of respect in his eyes. By the end of the evening, she realized that something had shifted. The cafe felt different, as if the air itself carried a new energy. Customers lingered longer, talking about the performance, sharing their amazement. She felt a deep sense of validation, not from the applause or the famous pianist's attention, but from knowing she had trusted herself and her music. That trust, she realized, was more powerful than any external recognition. Walking home that night, she thought about the journey ahead. There would be challenges, doubts, and moments of fear, but she felt ready. For the first time, she believed in her potential without reservation. Music had given her courage, and courage had given her a glimpse of what was possible. She knew this was only the beginning, but it was a beginning filled with promise, excitement, and the certainty that she had something valuable to offer the world. She couldn't wait for the next opportunity to play, to share her music with others, and to see where this unexpected moment of recognition might lead. Her dream was no longer just a distant hope. It was becoming real, note by note, key by key, in the small cafe where she had always felt most at home. The next day, she could hardly focus on anything else. The memory of the previous evening played over and over in her mind, like a beautiful melody she could not forget. People had been talking about her performance, and some even mentioned the famous pianist's surprise at her skill. She felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. She had always dreamed of this moment, but now that it had happened, she realized it was only the beginning. There was a new challenge ahead, and she could feel it pressing gently, like the anticipation before a storm. She returned to the cafe, nervous but determined. The piano sat in its usual corner, waiting for her fingers to awaken its keys. Today, she was not just practicing for herself. Today, she was preparing to face the pianist again. Word had spread that he would return later that week to attend a small gathering at the cafe. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. She wondered if she was truly ready, if she could handle the scrutiny of someone who had seen thousands of musicians and rarely expressed admiration. But deep down, she knew that fear had to be confronted if she wanted to grow. As she warmed up on the piano, she noticed that some regular customers had arrived earlier than usual. They offered encouraging smiles and soft words, sensing her anxiety. One of them whispered, "You were amazing last night. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself." She nodded, taking a deep breath and trying to let their support fill her with courage. Every note she played today was a quiet declaration that she was ready to face whatever came next. Hours passed as she practiced relentlessly, refining every piece, every chord, every transition. She was meticulous, aware that the pianist's eyes might catch the slightest imperfection. She experimented with dynamics, tempo, and expression, seeking the perfect balance between technical skill and emotional depth. Sometimes she stopped and replayed a section over and over, correcting small mistakes and imagining how the music would sound to someone like him. Each adjustment felt like a step closer to proving, not to him but to herself, that she belonged in the world she had always dreamed of. Finally, the moment arrived. The cafe was filled with a mixture of curiosity and excitement as the famous pianist entered. He walked confidently, exuding the same charisma that had made him renowned. But today, his gaze lingered on her longer than before. There was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, a silent acknowledgement that he remembered her from the previous night. He whispered something to his companions, and they all turned their attention toward the piano. The air seemed to thicken with anticipation. She approached the piano with steady steps, her heart still racing but her mind focused. She knew the pianist might doubt her abilities again, or perhaps even expect her to falter under pressure. But she had made a silent promise to herself. She would not be intimidated. She would play with honesty, with emotion, and with the knowledge that she had worked harder than many to reach this point. Her fingers hovered above the keys, and she drew a deep breath, centering herself. The first notes were soft, delicate, almost a whisper, but they carried a quiet confidence. She could feel the pianist's eyes on her, scrutinizing every movement. The audience was silent, captivated by the music that seemed to flow effortlessly from her hands. As the melody grew, it revealed layers of complexity and nuance that had been hidden in the simpler notes. She played with expression, letting each chord reflect her emotions, her struggles, and her determination. As she continued, she noticed subtle reactions from the pianist. His smirk had faded, replaced by a look of genuine interest. Occasionally, he leaned slightly forward, as if drawn into the music. She felt a surge of validation, not from the recognition itself, but from the realization that her music could touch someone so experienced. She allowed herself to be carried by the rhythm, her fingers dancing over the keys with both precision and feeling. Each section of the piece was a conversation, a dialogue between her heart and the audience, with the pianist as an unexpected witness. Midway through, the music shifted to a more challenging part, requiring both technical skill and emotional intensity. She closed her eyes, trusting her instincts, letting years of self-taught practice guide her hands. Her mind was focused entirely on the music, on the story she wanted to tell through sound. The room seemed to hold its breath, caught in the moment of anticipation and beauty. She could hear the subtle movements of the audience, their quiet admiration, and it encouraged her to continue with even more passion. The famous pianist, who had arrived with confidence and doubt, now seemed captivated. He leaned in, listening carefully, occasionally nodding as if understanding the depth of her playing. She realized that this was more than a performance. It was a statement of her journey, a demonstration that talent, dedication, and passion could transcend expectations. She had taken the mockery he had cast upon her and transformed it into motivation, channeling it into every note. As the piece neared its conclusion, she felt a wave of emotion. The music built to a crescendo, a combination of triumph, resilience, and vulnerability. Her fingers moved with certainty, articulating every nuance, every subtle shift in dynamics. She finished with a flourish, letting the final note linger, suspended in the air like a promise. Silence followed for a heartbeat, before the cafe erupted in applause. The sound was overwhelming, a mixture of excitement, relief, and admiration. The pianist approached her slowly, his expression a mixture of surprise and respect. He asked about her training, how she had achieved such skill without formal lessons. She explained her journey honestly, sharing the countless hours she had spent practicing alone, the challenges she had faced, and the love for music that had never wavered. He listened attentively, occasionally nodding, clearly impressed by her dedication and talent. His earlier mockery had been replaced by a genuine acknowledgement of her abilities. After the performance, the cafe felt transformed. Patrons lingered, discussing the experience and the unexpected brilliance they had witnessed. The young pianist felt a quiet pride, not just from the applause, but from knowing she had faced her fears and risen above them. She realized that this was more than a challenge. It was a turning point, a moment that would shape her path forward. Walking home that night, she reflected on the journey so far. Fear and doubt had always been companions, but she had learned to confront them, to let them fuel her rather than paralyze her. The experience with the famous pianist had shown her that skill and passion could break through preconceptions, that true talent could be recognized even in unexpected places. She felt a sense of readiness, a confidence that whatever challenges lay ahead, she could meet them. She knew there would be more tests, more critics, and more moments of doubt. But she also knew that she had proven something important to herself, that perseverance, dedication, and belief in one's own abilities could create moments of magic. The pianist had inadvertently given her a gift, not just recognition, but validation of her journey and the courage to continue. She was no longer just a dreamer. She was a musician, ready to face the world one note at a time. That night, she sat at her piano at home, playing softly, not for anyone else, but for herself. The music reflected both the joy of her small victory and the promise of what was to come. She felt her skills growing, her confidence expanding, and her heart filled with hope. She knew that challenges would continue, but the experience had shown her the power of dedication and the importance of trusting herself. The mockery of others had been transformed into motivation, a lesson she would carry forward as she continued to pursue her dream with unwavering determination. The day of the performance arrived, and the cafe was buzzing with anticipation. Regulars and newcomers alike had gathered, curious to witness what had already become a story in the neighborhood. The young pianist felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. Her fingers itched to touch the keys, but she reminded herself to stay calm and focus on the music. This was more than a chance to play. It was an opportunity to share her story through sound, to show the world the hours of practice, the struggles, and the passion that had brought her here. The famous pianist arrived, dressed in his usual elegant manner. His confident presence filled the room, and murmurs rippled through the audience. He glanced around, scanning the cafe, and his eyes landed on her at the piano. There was a flicker of recognition and something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or a quiet acknowledgement that the performance tonight could be different from the last. She met his gaze briefly, feeling a mixture of respect and determination. She nodded slightly, signaling that she was ready. The cafe fell into a hush. She lifted her hands to the keys, taking a deep breath. The first notes emerged softly, delicate, and inviting. She allowed the music to breathe, letting each note flow naturally into the next. Her fingers moved with confidence, shaped by countless hours of practice, yet guided by emotion rather than technique alone. The audience was immediately drawn in, sensing something extraordinary in the way she expressed herself through the piano. The famous pianist leaned back slightly, his usual smirk absent. He listened intently, clearly surprised by the depth and maturity of her playing. The melody shifted, becoming more complex and layered. Her hands danced across the keys, precise yet fluid, blending technical skill with heartfelt emotion. Every chord resonated in the room, weaving a story that words could not capture. Patrons sat silently, absorbed by the music, their eyes reflecting wonder and admiration. As the piece continued, the young pianist allowed herself to become fully immersed. Her mind was calm, yet every nerve was alive, alert to the subtle nuances of sound. She had learned to play with feeling, to translate her emotions into music, and tonight that skill shone brighter than ever. The cafe seemed to disappear, replaced by the landscape of her imagination, each note painting a vivid picture. The audience was caught in the spell, experiencing the journey alongside her. The famous pianist's expression softened. He recognized the dedication and natural talent before him, and the way she conveyed emotion through music. His eyes followed her fingers, impressed by their agility and grace. He could see that her skill was not the result of formal training alone, but of determination, practice, and an innate understanding of music. For the first time, he seemed genuinely curious about her potential, not just as a performer, but as an artist capable of touching hearts. Midway through the performance, the music shifted dramatically. The tempo increased, demanding precise coordination and emotional intensity. She played with confidence, trusting her instincts and allowing her passion to guide her. Each phrase was deliberate, yet infused with spontaneity, making the performance feel alive and unpredictable. The audience was captivated, holding their breath with each crescendo and pause. Even the most skeptical observers were drawn in, unable to look away. The young pianist felt a surge of energy. She had faced doubt and mockery, and now she was channeling those experiences into her music. Her fingers moved with both power and sensitivity, striking keys with purpose, yet caressing them as if telling a secret. She played for herself and for everyone who had ever doubted her, transforming fear into art. Every note was a declaration of resilience, every chord a testament to her journey. The piece reached its climax. The music built to a powerful crescendo, filling the room with sound that was at once intense and beautiful. Her hands flew across the keys, creating a tapestry of melody and rhythm that left no doubt about her talent. The audience was spellbound, leaning forward in their seats, some with eyes closed, completely absorbed in the performance. The famous pianist watched silently, his expression a mix of admiration and astonishment. He had expected mediocrity, perhaps, but what he witnessed was brilliance shaped by courage and perseverance. As the final notes echoed through the cafe, she let her hands rest gently on the keys, allowing the sound to fade naturally. Silence followed for a brief moment, almost as if the room itself was catching its breath. Then, applause erupted, loud and heartfelt. Patrons cheered, some standing, others clapping with enthusiasm. The energy in the room was electric, a combination of awe and appreciation for the performance they had just witnessed. She felt her chest swell with a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. She had done it. She had faced the challenge and emerged victorious. The famous pianist approached slowly, his steps measured, his gaze focused on her. There was no smirk, no hint of mockery, only a quiet respect that spoke volumes. He asked about her background, her practice routine, and how she had developed such skill without formal instruction. She explained her journey, the hours spent practicing alone, the challenges of learning by listening and experimenting, and the love for music that had never waned. He listened carefully, occasionally nodding, clearly impressed by her dedication and natural talent. After their conversation, the atmosphere in the cafe remained charged with excitement. Patrons lingered, discussing what they had seen, sharing their amazement at the young pianist's performance. She felt a sense of validation that went beyond recognition or praise. The performance had been a personal triumph, a demonstration of her ability to overcome doubt and express herself fully through music. It was a turning point, a moment that would stay with her forever. Walking home that evening, she reflected on the experience. The nervousness, the anticipation, and the ultimate success all mingled into a feeling of accomplishment and clarity. She realized that the challenge she had faced was not just about proving herself to the famous pianist or the audience, but about proving to herself that she could rise above fear and expectation. The music had given her courage, and courage had allowed her to shine in a way that no words could describe. That night, she sat at her piano once more, letting the music flow freely. The notes carried a mixture of triumph, relief, and hope. She experimented with new melodies, letting inspiration guide her hands. The experience with the famous pianist had opened a door, but it had also taught her the value of trust, patience, and perseverance. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but she felt ready to meet them, confident in her ability to convey emotion and skill through the piano. Her thoughts wandered to the future, imagining opportunities to perform for larger audiences, to collaborate with other musicians, and to continue growing as an artist. She understood that recognition could be fleeting, but the ability to create and share music was enduring. She vowed to keep playing, to keep learning, and to never allow doubt or ridicule to silence her passion again. The journey was just beginning, and she felt a sense of excitement and purpose that she had never experienced before. The cafe performance had changed everything. She had faced a challenge, transformed fear into expression, and captured the hearts of those who listened. The famous pianist, once skeptical, had become a witness to her talent and perseverance. She felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her music had the power to move people, to convey emotion, and to inspire. It was a reminder that passion, dedication, and authenticity could overcome doubt, and that every note she played was a step toward a future filled with possibility. After that unforgettable performance, life began to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. The cafe, once just a quiet place where she played to pass the time, became a place of interest and excitement. Regulars who had heard her play before now arrived with anticipation, eager to witness her music and watch her skill unfold. Word of her performance spread quickly, reaching beyond the neighborhood and drawing the attention of people who wanted to see her talent firsthand. She found herself the center of attention, not because she sought it, but because her passion and talent naturally drew people in. The famous pianist, whose earlier mockery had sparked her determination, began to show genuine interest in her growth. He visited the cafe more frequently, sometimes just to listen, sometimes to offer advice. He asked about her practice routines, the pieces she enjoyed, and the inspirations behind her music. His demeanor had changed from one of skepticism to one of respect. He recognized that her talent was rare, and that the way she expressed herself through music could not be taught in conventional lessons. For her, these visits were both humbling and encouraging. She had never imagined that someone of his stature would take an interest in her journey. Local journalists and bloggers started to cover her story. They described the young pianist who had amazed a renowned performer without any formal training. Photos of her at the piano, fingers dancing over the keys, accompanied glowing descriptions of her performance. The attention was overwhelming at times, and she often found herself feeling both proud and anxious. She was not used to being in the spotlight, and yet she realized that this attention could open doors she had only dreamed of. The key was to remain focused, to let her music speak louder than the words of others. Opportunities began to present themselves. Invitations to perform at local events, small concerts, and community gatherings started to arrive. Each offer felt like a new challenge, a chance to test herself in front of new audiences. She approached each opportunity with the same dedication and care that had guided her since the beginning. Every performance became a chance to grow, to refine her technique, and to share the emotions she carried in her music. Even as recognition increased, she remained grounded, remembering the quiet hours of practice and the nights spent learning by ear. The famous pianist eventually suggested a small collaboration for a charity event. She was nervous at first. The idea of performing alongside someone so experienced was daunting. But he offered encouragement, reminding her that her talent was not inferior to anyone's, and that her unique style brought something special to the music. She accepted the opportunity, seeing it as a way to challenge herself and grow further. Their rehearsals were intense but rewarding, combining his refined technique with her emotive and self-taught approach. They learned from each other, and she gained insights that would help her improve in ways she had never imagined. Through these experiences, she began to understand the true value of her journey. It was not just about impressing others or earning recognition, but about discovering her own strengths and trusting her instincts. Every note she played, every performance she gave, reinforced the connection between effort, emotion, and expression. She realized that music was not just an art form, but a language through which she could communicate her deepest feelings and experiences. This understanding gave her confidence and a sense of purpose that went beyond the applause and praise she received. Her family and friends noticed the changes as well. They saw her confidence growing, her sense of self expanding. They were proud of her, but more importantly, they admired the way she handled the new attention and opportunities with humility and dedication. She remained the same person at heart, passionate about music, hardworking and thoughtful, despite the growing recognition. It was clear that her journey had strengthened her not only as a musician but as a person. The community around her responded with warmth and support. People shared stories of how her music had touched them, lifted their spirits, or brought comfort during difficult times. Letters and messages arrived, expressing gratitude for her performances and encouragement to continue pursuing her dream. The young pianist realized that her talent could impact lives in meaningful ways, that music was more than a personal passion. It was a gift that could inspire and heal. She embraced this responsibility with care, continuing to practice and perform with the same dedication that had carried her this far. The famous pianist, too, became more than a mentor. He offered guidance on technique, performance etiquette, and ways to connect with audiences more deeply. He challenged her to push her boundaries, to explore new genres, and to find her own voice within the music. Their relationship was one of mutual respect. He recognized her raw talent, and she appreciated the wisdom and experience he shared. The collaboration they had begun soon expanded to include other events and performances, giving her opportunities to reach audiences she had never imagined. She also began to reflect on the importance of perseverance and resilience. She remembered the initial doubt and mockery she had faced, and she understood how those moments had fueled her determination. Without them, she might not have pushed herself to the level she had reached. She realized that challenges and setbacks were not obstacles but opportunities to grow stronger, to refine her skills, and to deepen her connection to the music she loved. Every difficulty she had faced became a lesson, and every success was a step toward her larger dreams. As she continued to perform, she discovered new dimensions to her talent. She experimented with composition, creating original pieces that reflected her experiences and emotions. Audiences responded with enthusiasm, appreciating the authenticity and vulnerability in her music. She felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before, a recognition that her journey was not only about mastering the piano but about expressing herself fully. Each new piece became a story, a conversation with her listeners, and a reflection of her growth as an artist. The young pianist's story became an inspiration to others. People who had once doubted themselves or felt constrained by circumstances saw in her journey a message of hope and determination. She became a symbol of what could be achieved through passion, perseverance, and self-belief. Letters, messages, and conversations often included words like encouragement and gratitude, reinforcing the idea that talent combined with dedication could change lives. She embraced this role quietly, continuing to focus on her craft, while recognizing the impact her journey could have on others. The collaboration with the famous pianist reached a milestone when they performed together at a larger community event. The audience was captivated, drawn not only to the technical skill displayed, but also to the emotional depth of their combined performance. She felt a sense of accomplishment, not from the applause, but from the realization that her music could communicate in ways words could not. This experience solidified her confidence and reinforced her understanding that dedication and authenticity were the true measures of success. Looking back, she understood how far she had come. From the early days of self-teaching in a quiet corner of the cafe to performing alongside a renowned pianist, her journey had been defined by passion, courage, and resilience. Recognition and opportunities had changed her circumstances, but they had not changed her essence. She remained dedicated, humble, and deeply connected to her music. She knew that the journey was ongoing, that there were still challenges to face and skills to refine, but she felt ready for whatever lay ahead. The young pianist's story was no longer just her own. It had become part of a larger narrative of inspiration and possibility. She embraced her role as both artist and example, knowing that every note she played, every performance she gave, had the potential to touch lives and encourage others to pursue their dreams. The experiences she had gained, the lessons she had learned, and the recognition she had earned all contributed to a sense of purpose that went beyond personal achievement. Music had given her a voice, and she was determined to use it fully, with courage, integrity, and unwavering passion. Months passed, and the young pianist's life continued to evolve in ways she had never imagined. The recognition she had earned was no longer a fleeting moment. It had become part of her daily reality. Invitations to perform at larger venues, community events, and charity concerts became frequent. Each opportunity brought new challenges but also new growth. She approached every performance with the same dedication and passion that had guided her from the beginning, knowing that each note was a reflection of her journey and her commitment to music. The collaboration with the famous pianist became more than just a series of performances. It turned into a mentorship, a partnership where both could learn from each other. He shared insights about stage presence, musical interpretation, and connecting with an audience. She absorbed these lessons while still preserving her own style, the unique voice that had captivated him and so many others. Together, they performed pieces that combined technical brilliance with raw emotion, and audiences responded with awe. The pianist's initial mockery had been replaced by mutual respect, and the young musician's confidence soared. She began composing her own music, creating melodies that told stories of her experiences, her struggles, and her triumphs. Each composition was a reflection of her life, a way to communicate without words. Audiences responded with admiration, drawn to the authenticity and depth of her music. She discovered that her talent was not just about technical skill, but about conveying emotion and connecting with listeners. Every performance became a shared experience, a moment where she could touch hearts and inspire others. Her journey also inspired those around her. People who had once doubted themselves or felt limited by circumstances saw in her story a message of hope and perseverance. She received letters and messages expressing gratitude, with people sharing how her music had motivated them to pursue their own dreams. The young pianist embraced this role quietly, understanding that her influence extended beyond the stage. Her music became a bridge, connecting her to others and showing that passion and dedication could overcome obstacles. Despite the growing fame, she remained grounded. She continued to practice diligently, exploring new techniques and refining her skill. She never allowed recognition to diminish her love for music or distract her from the process that had brought her this far. Every note she played was a reminder of her journey, of the hours spent learning alone, and of the courage it took to perform in front of a renowned pianist who had once doubted her. This perspective kept her humble and focused, ensuring that her growth remained steady and authentic. One evening, she was invited to perform at a prestigious event that attracted musicians, critics, and enthusiasts from across the region. The audience was larger and more discerning than any she had faced before. She felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but she welcomed it as a sign that she was about to rise to another level. As she played, her fingers danced across the keys with precision and grace, each note carrying emotion and storytelling. The audience was captivated, and she could feel the energy of the room responding to her music. It was a powerful affirmation of how far she had come. The famous pianist was in attendance, sitting quietly among the audience. He watched with admiration, recognizing the growth and depth she had achieved. Her performance reflected not just technical skill, but a maturity and emotional resonance that could only come from experience and dedication. He knew that she had surpassed the expectations of many, including his own. For the young pianist, the validation was meaningful, but it was secondary to the joy of expressing herself fully and connecting with others through music. After the performance, she was approached by several event organizers and music enthusiasts who praised her talent and offered further opportunities. Each conversation was an affirmation of her ability to continue growing and sharing her music. She realized that the journey was ongoing, that every performance was a step toward new experiences, new audiences, and new challenges. The sense of possibility was exhilarating, and she embraced it with enthusiasm and determination. She also reflected on the people who had supported her along the way, the regulars at the cafe who had listened patiently, the famous pianist who had become a mentor, and her family and friends who had encouraged her from the start. Their belief in her talent and perseverance had been instrumental in her success. She understood the importance of gratitude and humility, and she carried these values into every interaction, every performance, and every new opportunity. As she continued to perform and compose, she developed a deeper understanding of herself and her purpose. Music was more than a skill or a career. It was a medium through which she could express her emotions, tell her story, and inspire others. She learned that challenges, doubts, and setbacks were part of the process, and that true growth came from facing them with courage and resilience. Her journey had taught her the value of patience, persistence, and self-belief. Over time, she became a respected figure in the music community. Her performances were sought after, and her compositions began to attract attention for their originality and emotional depth. She remained true to her roots, remembering the quiet hours of practice at the cafe and the moment when a famous pianist's mockery had sparked her determination. That moment had transformed into the defining breakthrough of her life, a reminder that challenges could be turned into opportunities, and doubt could be transformed into motivation. Her story became an inspiration not only to aspiring musicians but to anyone striving to achieve their dreams. It demonstrated that talent combined with dedication, perseverance, and passion could overcome skepticism, obstacles, and self-doubt. She shared her experiences with others, encouraging them to pursue their passions and trust in their abilities. Her music continued to reach new audiences, and her influence grew steadily, reflecting the impact of her journey and the power of authenticity. As she looked back on her journey, she felt a sense of fulfillment and pride. She had transformed her life through music, turning a quiet passion into a meaningful career and a source of inspiration for others. The mockery that had once challenged her had become a catalyst for growth, leading her to opportunities, mentorship, and recognition that she had never imagined. She understood that her journey was ongoing, but she faced the future with confidence, passion, and the knowledge that her music had the power to touch lives and create lasting impact. In every performance, she poured her heart and soul into the music, connecting with audiences in a way that transcended words. Her story was one of resilience, determination, and the transformative power of passion. She had learned to embrace challenges, trust herself, and remain authentic, and in doing so, she had discovered the true meaning of success. Her journey continued, each day bringing new opportunities, experiences, and moments to share her gift with the world. The young pianist had not only realized her dream but had become a symbol of hope, inspiration, and the enduring power of music.